Hey everyone, this is George Couros. Welcome back to another episode of the Innovator's Mindset podcast. And it's a little bit of a special edition of the Innovator's Mindset podcast because it is actually the 10-year anniversary of the release of my book, The Innovator's Mindset. And I will be honest with you that I think it's had an impact on classrooms. I have no idea the amount, obviously, but the one thing I do know 100% for sure, it has changed my life since writing that book. Things that I never could have imagined happened after I've written that book. I've been able to speak in, I think, 5 continents in person, one virtually. Africa is the one I did virtually. And the only one I haven't spoken is Antarctica, and I don't know if you can. But yeah, it's been really, really amazing. And it opened doors for me I didn't even know existed. And I want to talk about some of the lessons I've had since releasing the book. And interestingly enough, that even though it's 10 years since it's been published, it still is in many classrooms, many organizations still order it for book studies because it's about dealing with change. And no matter when we are in the world of education, the world in general, we will always deal with change. And that's the whole premise of the book. How do you have that mindset to not only deal with it, but actually take advantage of it? So obviously the link to the book is down below. And I'm just really excited about this. I will tell you, it's kind of interesting. Not everyone loves it. And I think it's kind of funny to kind of look at some of the negative comments. So I wrote a newsletter about this. And one of my favorite reviews ever was this one. And I won't say the person's name, but it's real because I don't know who it is, to be honest with you. But I just think it's hilarious. Had to use this book for class. I got an A in the class, but really did not find the book very helpful in improving my teaching. What I love about this is that the book sucked, but I got an A, which is good for you. Congratulations. In spite of the horribleness of my book, you got an A. Congratulations. Very proud of you. And no thanks to me, you received an A. So, I think that's an important aspect is not every book in education in the world is going to connect with every single person. That's okay, right? There's a lot of books that I don't really like that have had an impact. And there are books that I love that no one really cares about. It's just, that's how it is. So I'm okay with that. But I actually, I did receive, I've received a lot of really positive reviews. And one of them that really stuck out to me was this one. Love this book. It was such an easy read, and it felt like you're having a conversation with the author. I honestly couldn't put it down. As you can see, there were many important points made, and I marked them to go back. You can see in the picture, just tons of, sticky notes. I will be recommending this book to my colleagues. I'm very proud of that review in particular. I was looking through many of the, reviews on Amazon, and the reason why I loved it is because I wanted it to feel like a conversation that you were having, just sitting down with me, talking about stuff. I kind of joke around, like I mess around. I like this. And I think a lot of times we talk about education. We're so serious about this, and we're so serious that we scare people away. Where I just, I think some of the most impactful things that we do in the world, we invite people in. People feel comfortable in doing this. And kind of a little backstory about how the Innovator's Mindset came about. And it's not to brag, it's to kind of give you hope in whatever you're trying to achieve and how important it is to stick to with what you believe in, even when people aren't necessarily excited about it. I had been writing probably for 5 or 6 years prior to the Innovator's Mindset on my blog. And it was at a time where a lot of people read blogs. That was kind of the go-to. People weren't watching videos as much as they were, not listening to podcasts, whatever. Blogs were the thing. And as much as I hate it, people don't read blogs the same way they used to, but I believe in the power of blogging, not only to share messaging, but also to really, most importantly, to really kind of verify my own thinking, to really kind of understand other people are going to see what I've written. So I have to really kind of think about their perspective and acknowledge some of the things that I might be missing through this. So really that empathy through blogging has been really powerful for me. So even though people don't read blogs as much as they used to, I will tell you, I write the same amount I did probably when the Innovator's Mindset came out, because I just love writing. I think it's really helpful to my own thinking. And because I had built an audience through my blog and I had written quite a bit, there were several publishers who reached out to me, and one was a pretty prominent one. And I won't say the name, but they reached out to me and they said, hey, we would love for you to submit a proposal. We really love your work. We'd love for you to publish a book with us. And so I did what they asked me to do. And I think I wrote the introduction and maybe a chapter and got some feedback on it. And they'll send this book out to several people. And basically, overwhelmingly, the pushback was like, this is not academic enough. And there's like way too many stories. The one thing I do remember that was a positive is said, this is, maybe not our taste, but innovation is a really important topic in education. And if you don't get this person to write about it, somebody's going to write about it somewhere. So it's really important that you have to kind of nail this topic. So I remember that feedback, and I was really disappointed. I really struggled with it. And the reason I struggled with it is because I'm embarrassed to say this, there's a lot of education books I don't really like reading. And again, kind of going back, like that negative review, I'm not really bothered by it because, like I said, not every education book, and it's not that they're not great stuff, there's not great ideas, a lot of good thinking about it, they're just really hard for me to read. I really love stories. I was really drawn to, as a kid, Rick Riley in Sports Illustrated. He would do these stories about sports, and they were really emotional, and you felt very connected to the story. And that's what I really want to do in education. I was so influenced by Rick Riley, and that's what I want to do. But that wasn't necessarily, especially at the time, wasn't the majority of books in education that I read. And so I felt like, hey, listen, if I want to, publish a book, if I want to be a published author, I gotta play ball here. I gotta do what they're doing. But something just kind of held me back. There was a contract sitting in my email, probably for about 6 or 7 months. And I just remember I would snooze it and I'd come back to it and then I wouldn't sign it. And I'm like, just something's not here. Something's bugging me about that feedback. Because as much as I appreciate the feedback, and that might have worked for that company, it was kind of going away from what I believed in and really kind of struggling because I wouldn't want to read the book they were asking me to write. So I was speaking at a conference, and I was one of the keynotes, and the other keynote was Dave Burgess. And Dave and I have a history, and it's kind of interesting. Like, we kind of known each other, and I've talked about this quite a bit. There's a really powerful story in my upcoming book about how I first met Dave, and I promise you will love it. Even though me and Dave were I'm especially embarrassed by it, but I think it's a really powerful story, and there's a big message behind it. But we had met before, but we had met again at this conference. And even though, like, I had not really known much about Dave at the time, I knew a little bit about him. And I knew that he published his own book, Teach Like a Pirate, but I really didn't know anything else. So he said to me at this conference, hey, have you ever considered writing a book? I'm like, actually, somebody approached me about writing one, and I've been sitting on a contract. He's like, well, don't sign it, because I would love for you to consider publishing with my company. And the really interesting thing about Dave and DBC Publishing was hardly anybody knew about them at the time. It was very an up and coming, but they did things differently. And it was very unique to what I had been offered from other companies to write. So I submitted what I had submitted to this other company, and what the other company hated, Dave loved. And I was kind of shocked, to be honest with you, because I was just waiting for this negative feedback. And he said to me, people want to read. It's already proven. They want to read the way you write, right? You already have an audience. And so if you went away from how you wrote, then people would feel like you're like a different person writing this book. Like, we love the way that you're writing this. And obviously, like, when you write a book, there is editing, it gets cleaned up. I say way too many words. Obviously in this podcast, I always say too many words. And so they really tighten it up, but it was still my voice. And when he had said that to me, I really wanted to do it, but I'm going to be honest with you. I struggled with the thought of publishing with Dave's company because it wasn't established, and it was so different from what I had known. And I actually remember talking to my wife, and Paige and I had a conversation. And I was very reluctant about doing this, and we talked back and forth. And the concern was, not going with something established. And then as I thought about it more, it was basically me doing the opposite of what I was advocating for in the book, really trying something new, really taking risks to create a better opportunity. So eventually I actually signed the contract, and within, I think, 3 weeks of signing the contract, the book was done. Like the first draft was done because I was so excited about it. And I have this process where when I'm like committed to a book, I just go, I just write. And it's not that I don't do any planning before or anything like that, but my blog had given me years of stuff to pull from to bring a book together. So I feel a lot of times, people say they want to write a book, but they just want to write a book so they can say they write a book. But for me, a book has to find me, right? And the last book and the books prior, they weren't basically ideas until they hit me in the head, and then they were done a few weeks later. Like they found me. There was something I was like really passionate about that I felt, I need to write this. And so I wrote it, and then I think it was done at the end of July, and by the middle of October, I think it was October 21st, the book had come out. And so I was really excited about it. And the reviews were really, really great at the beginning. People really liked it. And I think, it might have been a little different from what people were used to reading at the time. And so I'm so grateful for Dave's willingness to push me to try to do different things. And so I wanted to emphasize 3 things that I wrote in the book that I think are actually more important today than when I first wrote them. And it's kind of like a doubling down. And I just wanted to share this. And maybe I think part of it was I wasn't as adamant about it in the book as maybe I am now. And so I'm glad I wrote these things, but it's like these things are way more important than when they were first written. And so the first one is this. I wrote this in an email. I love writing. It really helps me clear my thinking. I said, to be innovative, you have to really emphasize the basics and be comfortable with repetition. So the thing is that we always talk about innovation, but I think there's a real power in nailing the basics. And I always give this analogy of the jazz musician. The best jazz musicians have the ability to improvise, but the reason they have the ability to improvise, to create really amazing music, is because they know the basics of their instrument so down. They have it down pat. And so you have to kind of go beyond that process. And I think that is something that matters more than ever, is that we often talk about the aspirational, but not necessarily the foundational. And you need the foundational to reach the aspirational. And I wrote this in the book. This is one of the quotes. Innovation in any area acquires a fundamental understanding of basic concepts. To be a great musician, you must learn the basic concepts of music. The best writers in the world at some point learn how to read and write. The speed at which people learn the fundamentals varies from person to person, but every master first had to acquire the basic knowledge and competency. The basics are essential in our modern world. And I still believe that. I think this is something that we can easily get away from. And I read a book, I highly recommend it. It's called The AI-Driven Leader by Jeff Woods. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was he had emphasized some of his work that one of his companies was really focused on, like, what is the one thing that your organization needs to do really, really well to be successful? And for me, the thing that schools need to do more than anything to really be successful is something that was probably really important when I was a kid. They have to nail reading and writing. They have to get that down. Once you nail that, every door opens up. And maybe you don't agree with me. So what would be your one thing? What is the one foundational thing? And I think that's something that really, really matters to me in the work that we're doing. To be innovative, you have to nail the basics. And so the next point I want to share is this. Doing new stuff just because it is new is not innovative. It has to be better than what you were doing prior. And so I think that when you're looking at organization or innovative, they're always trying the new thing. They're always trying a new thing. And it's like, hey, like we haven't got the last thing down pat. You're so focused on the new stuff that we're not really good at the old stuff. And it's weird because I actually started writing because I wanted to understand digital portfolios. And the reason I wanted to understand digital portfolios was, as a principal, we wanted to implement digital portfolios in our school. But I said, look, we can't teach something that we have never learned ourselves. I'm going to go first. So I actually went through this process. And even though I implemented this 15 years ago, I think, as a principal, I still update my portfolio 2 to 3 times a week because not only has it pushed my learning, it has opened up doors for me. And I still believe in the emphasis on portfolios. Now, how the portfolio looked when I first created mine versus what it looks like today is very, very different. And the access to media, the things that we can put in it are very different, but it's still that really basic fundamental thing. And what if like every school said, hey, look, for the next 5 years, we're going to really emphasize portfolios. Every kid's going to walk out of here with one. Really kind of nailing that. And that, by the way, really nails reading and writing down if you actually have people write in a portfolio all that time. And that's one of the things that we really emphasized. That really kind of, it's really hammering that home, that really not just doing new stuff all the time, but really focusing on a few things and really hammering it down. And I think when some of the pushback that I've had on this, I think that really, really matters is we're always looking for the new thing, but some of the traditional stuff, the stuff that really, really we used hundreds of years ago still matter today. The one thing I always talk about, I still tell stories to get my point across. Storytelling is literally the oldest practice known in history. And so if you are doing things in your classroom that were done hundreds of years ago, keep that work today, keep doing them. But if you're doing new stuff just because it's new, but it doesn't work for kids, don't do it. I think we have to really kind of understand we need to do a few things and really nail them down and get better at that. And so that's something that matters. And I actually wrote this as one of the quotes from the book. Different for the sake of different can be a waste of time and may even leave us worse off than where we started. Simply replacing A with B is not only not innovation, but could actually lead to something worse than what we had before. Designing solutions with both the individual's interests and the end goal in mind is crucial for any innovation to be successful. So it's not about doing everything. It's about doing a few things really, really well, which actually leads to the next and final point that I'm going to share with you today. The idea that less is still more. It's interesting because I see people emphasizing, I had a whole chapter on this years ago, that basically schools were trying to do too much and they were overwhelming their staff. And so we're talking about innovation, but we can barely, get through the day to day because there's so much stuff that we're doing. And there's already so much stuff you got to do, but then it's like initiative. And I think that's where people really kind of get lost. And one of the, and I didn't write this in the email, but one of the things that I emphasized was a TED Talk by Barry Schwartz. And it was called The Paradox of Choice. And one of the things that he talked about is that we live in this world where we have so much choice that we actually get inundated with stuff and we don't know if we made a good decision. So it's actually really important to really focus on doing fewer things better. Because if you're just overwhelmed with choice, you never know which one to make. And then you try everything and nothing actually, basically nothing is successful. And I wrote this in the email. Too many schools and districts are constantly trying to do everything, which has led them to excel at one thing in particular, burnout. Pretty true statement, if you ask me, but I am biased to this. But here's something I wrote in the book about this idea of focusing on doing fewer things. The less is more rule is a good one for leaders to follow. If we aren't intentional, we may promote confusion and burnout instead of inspiring innovation and deep learning. Before you add a new initiative, ask yourself, is this adding or subtracting to the already full plates of the educators I serve? Is this new program or initiative going to help us achieve our vision? And specifically, what are the goals for how it will impact learning? Just focusing on a fewer things can actually lead to, us doing stuff very, very well. If you try to do everything, you'll do nothing well. If you do a few things, you can really bring it home. And so those are the few things. I just want to share some closing thoughts with you. When I talked about the idea of the innovator's mindset, it's simply defined as this. It's the belief that abilities, intelligence, and talents are developed so they lead to the creation of new and better ideas. One of the things that I share with groups I work with all the time when I speak to them is that I'm not here to tell you how to do your job. I'm not the expert. You're actually sitting beside the expert right now. It's all your colleagues that we need to connect with each other. All I'm trying to do is share some ideas with you. And ultimately, you have to make them your own. You have to figure out, hey, this works for me or this doesn't work for me, because nobody understands your context, your community as much as you. And I think that's something that I really am proud of, is really defaulting to the expertise of the people I'm sharing with, that they find their own solutions. That a lot of times we want people to tell us the way, but what happens when that person who tells us how to do things leaves? Then you're stuck on your own. But when you actually understand that you can find the solutions to the things that you're looking for, not only the problems, but the opportunities, then we are so much better off. And that's the whole premise of the innovator's mindset. And in this email I wrote, whether it's AI, assessment, literacy, leadership, or whatever, this definition still matters. It doesn't mean ignoring what works, but having the willingness to either iterate or sometimes even invent new opportunities for those you serve, because no one understands your community and context better than you. The most known quote from the book is this one, that change is an opportunity to do something amazing. And whether it happens to you or you make it happen, it's not going away. So how you leverage it and create opportunities really, really matters. And just kind of in final, first of all, thanks for staying to the end of the podcast. I hope you will, if you've never bought the book, I hope you check it out. If you love the book, I hope you will get a copy for someone else. If you were forced to read in a class, I hope you got an A. So I apologize if you were forced to read it. But this is a book I'm really, really proud of. And sometimes I struggle with the idea that I will never write a book as good as The Innovator's Mindset. But I think the reason why I'm okay with it is because I really learned a lot of lessons from my parents' immigrant story and how they dealt with change. And I think a lot of times we complain about the things our families wish they would have had when we were younger. And so a lot of the book is my inspiration, not only from education, but from growing up in an immigrant family, from learning from people who went through way harder times. And as I always say about my parents, they did so much with so little. For me to do so little with so much makes no sense. And The Innovator's Mindset, I'm so proud of this book. And I know we're not supposed to say that, but I think it's okay. Like, we want our kids to be proud of stuff that they've done. And I'm very proud of this book. And so I hope you check it out. But for all of you that have supported me over the years, who've listened to this podcast, who bought the book, who share with others, you have no idea how much you've made an impact on my life. And I hope in some little way I've helped you. And so thanks so much for being here. Thanks for inspiring me to continue to grow and to get better. And thanks for the support of myself, the book, and all that I do. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.